Okay, and I've got a couple 2 cents to say about George Silver. George Silver was my first love in terms of historical fencing, and actually because of being interested in George Silver and the work of Stephen Hand in Australia particularly. I've got his book, videos, absolutely fantastic. I actually bought this George Silver style sword even before I knew I could do historical fencing, so I'm a big fan of George Silver. I also someone that studies and teaches history, and I don't agree with what a lot of people say about George Silver. They say he's some grumpy old guy that's upset because the Italians are coming in and messing with English fencing. Well, that might be some element of it, but I don't think the guy was speaking any kind of lies. I think that he was seeing what he saw. He was an expert fencer himself, and he's speaking the truth. And what is he saying? Well, he's saying that the men of England should not be learning to stab each other in private quarrels with this long pointy thing. Why? Well, because that's murder. You don't want to be killing anybody, right? That's not a good thing to be killing people in your own country. Very, very bad thing. And also, this is very specialized for a duel. I mean, it could be used in a battle, but it's very, very long. And he says when people are all fighting in a battle, they're all squished up together. This is a very hard thing to move around to protect yourself or to cut. I mean, you can't really cut well with this. And if you're thinking armor's involved, he's saying battle axes and stuff. This is kind of bendy too. Some battle axe comes and I don't think I could really stop the battle axe from coming at me. Now my George Silver sword is actually made for fencing, so it's kind of too thin, but also kind of too thick for a real sword. But it would be strong enough to block things. So in terms of what sword he thought, Englishmen and some women, I suppose at the time too, should have been training with, he thought it was the actual broadsword, a back sword or a double-edged sword that you could use in battle, and it could also be something that you could rely on in self-defense. He does admit, if you read his stuff carefully, he does admit that facing a rapier, one-on-one duel is a big problem. One of the reasons is you can see there could be a bit of a length difference, maybe not as dramatic as you might assume. And he does clearly point out that if you're facing a rapier, you should be using the variable guards, which are basically what you learn in rapier class here with the quarta, secunda, terza, and quarta, all those sort of things to dominate the opponent's blade. So he's teaching essentially rapier combat using this not quite rapier sword. So he does admit that. And he also admits that if you're facing a rapier and you're sort of equal skilled, it's quite possible you're going to have to be backing up a lot. He recommends trying to back up in a bit of a circular form so that you're not just going straight back, because eventually if you go straight back, you're going to hit something or fall off. If you're in some kind of room or some sort of smaller area, you could maybe make a bit of a circle. And he does give advice on how you could beat a rapier. And quite likely, if you're a superior fencer with this, you might be able to beat. You hopefully can beat a rapier fencer who's not as skilled. But he doesn't really, he doesn't really say that in a one-on-one duel that this is going to be easy to beat a rapier. He just thinks that the rapier is a bad choice for societies against dueling. He's probably using a little bit of hyperbole in there, but I do think that he speaks the truth. Okay, some other points with George Silver, which I think are really, really interesting. One of the points he makes is that if you have two fencers that are equal, neither will really be able to hurt the other if they're both fighting intelligently. And the better that I'm getting at fencing, and the more I'm fighting people who are good, I'm not great yet, but I'm getting kind of intermediate level good. I'm noticing that. It's very hard for either of us to score, no matter what the weapon is, if it's rapier or this or something else. Other stuff that I think is really interesting with George Silver is he talks about the times of attacking. This is just basic stuff, but I think it's really cool. So there's the time of the hand, which is the fastest one is just to hit with just with your arm or your hand. Then there's a hand in the body where you might lean a little bit, right? And then if that's not getting you there, you might have to add the foot. So hand, body, and foot, probably in that order, where the hand's going to go first. The body and the foot. And don't forget, he recommended thrusting as much as cutting. So he wasn't saying it's just the cutting weapons that are better. He said the cut and thrust is better than just thrust and better than just cut. And then eventually he said, well, if the arm body and foot is enough. It's hand, body, and feet, right? So this is where you could be like taking multiple steps, right? So or you could even imagine like some kind of passing step. He doesn't really get in specifically with footwork, because I think to him, fencing is quite a complicated art using a lot of different footwork patterns. So that's a little bit trickier. Stephen Hand's done a lot of work on this. He figures that you start with your, like the open guard would be like this, actually, with left foot behind. So I can see like hand, body, and foot being something like that, where you're taking sort of like 2 steps. There's a bit of a delay to trick the guy. But in any case, I think George Silver made a lot of sense, and he wouldn't have been published and read if he hadn't made a lot of good points. And we know from reading Swetnam for a generation later that George Silver apparently him, for whatever reason, a trend was set to be wearing the broadsword again instead of the rapier amongst the English. So it looks like George Silver was actually quite influential, and he's not just some old angry guy. He's actually has there's a lot of wisdom in his stuff. And if you do fencing, if you're a fencer, doesn't matter, modern fencer, historical fencer, and you read his stuff, you go like, yeah, that's kind of basic fencing principles. It just makes perfect sense. So there are my 2 points or 2 cents on George Silver for you. Well, thanks for listening. If you have any comments or disagree, you're always welcome to say that. I don't know everything. That's just what I think, and I wanted to get it out there. Thank you. Bye-bye.